Hey folks, welcome back to Green Joe Coffee School. My name is Vince and today we are discussing windows. All I do is win no matter what. In this video we're going to be covering the cost of windows, how to put them in, what to look out for, and some different tips and tricks when it comes to your food truck, coffee truck window installation. So if you are new to my channel, I teach people how to build coffee trucks, trailers, and carts, how to get into this business. Some of my content for those of you that are just building like food trucks, a lot of my build out content is really going to help out. For those of you that are looking more towards coffee shops, a lot of my business videos and contents will help out. And of course, for those of you that are looking on going into coffee trucking, I am your man. So with no further ado, let's break this down. Windows are that essential point of communication between you and your client where you're going to be talking back and forth and making the actual transaction. So we want to keep that in mind. Let's get the window in such a place where we can make that happen easily. Some of the things to consider are going to be the size of your window itself, the sheer size of the window, but also the size of the opening, because sometimes you have a window, but then you have a smaller opening. For those of you that are in California, you're going to see that they're very particular about the opening size. You have to also consider on whether or not this window is going to be a potential fire exit. Most of us, we're going to be able to just walk through the door, but if you're dealing with a smaller camper or your window is in an odd location, it's just food for thought. Okay, so the bigger your window is, the bigger gaping hole in the side of your truck or trailer that you have. So things like HVAC can really become a nightmare, especially if you're in high humidity and you're trying to actually refrigerate your air as opposed to just evaporative cooling. If you want to maintain your HVAC, you're going to try to shoot for a smaller opening within your window. So some of the concession windows have different types of openings. There's the awning type where it pops up. That's the kind that I tend to favor. And then there's also the sliding type. I like the awning type because you can close the window and lock the window. I'm located here in Albuquerque, currently number 8 in the country for property theft. So for me, I don't want to give anybody any bright ideas. I like to close my doors, lock them. Close my windows, lock them. Installing a window. Who is this made for? I would consider this more of your upper level do-it-yourselfer. And the reason why is because to cut into the steel, you're going to need to use an angle grinder, which you're cutting metal, there's a cutting wheel, there's a potential hazard involved. If any of you have used cutting wheels before, you know that they kick, and those cutting blades, if they hit you, they're taking something off. So there's a higher risk when it comes to using angle grinders. This is going to be probably for someone who's more of an upper level do-it-yourselfer. Also, you really got to know how to use a measuring tape. What I mean by that is if you're new to measuring and cutting, what you'll notice is you measure something, and then when you go to make the tick mark, sometimes you make it a little bit to this side of the line. Well, then if you're cutting and your blade is also to this side of the line, then all of a sudden you're really far on this side of the line. A person that has been dealing with cutting for a while and understands kind of how they make their own measurements and how they do their own cutting, they're going to know those things and they're going to be able to dial it in within a 1/16 of an inch. For those of us that are just getting started, we don't know. We're just going to take the measuring tape out and start measuring stuff, right? So if you're not that person that can do this job, well, how am I going to get this window into my coffee trailer? Well, there's a few allies that I would be out there looking for. The first one is consider auto glass repair, okay? Because these guys, they cut into metals all the time. They're pretty familiar with how to cut into steel. They're familiar with how to install windows, and there's a lot of them. So that would be the first person that I reached out to. Other allies that you may want to consider installing your windows are places like RV Repair. They're also used to cutting into metal. They're also used to installing windows. Now, if you reach a dead end on both of those and you still can't find anybody to install your window, I would probably start hitting the food truck scene and asking the food trucks, after you buy a burrito, asking the food trucks where they got their windows installed. They might be able to give you some leads on how to get your window installed. Okay, so what kind of windows should I install into my coffee food trailer? By DOT standard, it needs to be tempered glass. So you can't just use any residential window, because when residential windows break, they have that big shards. Tempered glass is the one that breaks into the little squares that you see at car accidents. So it needs to be some type of tempered glass if you're going to use glass. If you're not going to use glass, there are other forms of clear plastics that you can use. I would highly encourage polycarbonate. That's the material that they make motorcycle windshields out of. Those don't shatter when you come under impact. Plexiglass, on the other hand, does create shatters. So if you're going to use glass, tempered glass. If you're going to use plastics, polycarbonates. Okay, should you build your own window or should you just buy one? Now, I've built my own window multiple times, and every time I've come to regret it, and I no longer do it. It's been just a crazy pain in the butt. What I've come to learn is I spend more time working on the window than if I just would have bought the dang thing anyways. Maybe $200 by doing it myself, but it takes me 2 to 3 weeks longer than if I were to just buy a window and have it installed. So at this point, I'm done trying to build my own windows. I just purchased the window, cut a hole in my trailer, put the window in. Now, for the latest trailer that we're building for our coffee school, we did 2 windows, 48 by 36 inches, got them off of Amazon. They turned out to be great windows, so I will put the link in the description. You could check those out there. So where you put your window is really gonna kind of depend on you, and I have a quick video I do wanna show on that. So here we're trying to figure out where to put the windows. The first consideration was how much this thing opened. So we opened it up and it actually is lower. We thought maybe it would kick up higher. So we wanted to bring the awning out because we're like, well, if it kicks up high and then we go to bring the awning out, is it gonna go past the awning and create some mess in there? So we said, okay, well, let me bring the awning out and then we'll kick it up. But when we kicked it up, it doesn't go past, it doesn't open up higher than the top of the window itself. It's actually 3 inches lower. And so that consideration is out the door. We don't have to worry about that. But what we do have to worry about is when we roll the awning back up, it's gonna sit up here. We need to make sure that the height of our window clears that awning. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of tint in here, but so we said, okay, well, the awning's gonna sit in here, so we're gonna put it below. So we mapped out 8 inches of distance from the awning is where we'll put the height of the window. And then we kind of played around with it. We said, okay, well, you know, person's ordering a cup, they're looking up at the barista, how's that gonna work? Is it at the right counter level? I need to grab a cup. I don't want them reaching high to grab cups. I want them to be able to reach right here. You know, if I were setting up like a drive-through, for example, you know, in my car, what's the height of the window? So those are all kind of things to consider. For us, the biggest thing is being able to pass a drink without spilling it. So we're looking at the height of the window off the ground as well. So here on the inside, we got a couple landmarks that we're going to use. We got this big beam that runs across this steel tubing. That's a 1-incher. And you can see in here, there's some beams as well. So we're going to use those to tack into the window into there. But this is actually going to be my landmark to make my cuts. I'm going to use this beam. This correlates with a line on the outside that I was able to kind of measure off of. What we're going to do next is we're going to pop these boards off, pull off our insulation, which is a little bit of double work on our end. I'm okay with that. Measure everything out in here. I said, okay, we came in here, we put this up 12 inches off of that beam. We said, okay, that's 12 inches. So we're kind of looking at this. Okay, I'm gonna hand a coffee here. For me, I gotta bend down a little bit. I'm 5'8", so for most gals, you say 5'4". That's pretty close to where they hand a cup of coffee. We'll probably build a little counter right here so that there's an easy transition when I get a cup of coffee from my barista to the cashier. So we'll probably build a little counter here. The big things that we're gonna work off of is this steel beam, and then of course these beams in here. Okay, so take home points. When you're looking at your window, you want to look at the height of your window. If you go too high, you might be stepping into the awning territory, so just kind of keep that in mind. But too low, if you're doing like a drive-through, you're really at risk for things like trucks to hit it. Also, when we put the height of the window, we're just kind of looking at like, you know, who's the tallest person that's going to be walking up to the truck. Most people are under 6 feet. So, you know, we put the window height about 6 feet. My thought on that was anybody taller than 6 feet, they're used to ducking anyways. But if you go too high, you know, above eye level, then people are reaching up to get hot drinks, and you really don't want someone to be reaching up to grab a hot drink from you. That's going to cause some liability. So you want it eye level or lower. The limits on the bottom, really what I was thinking about was the barista, because they're kind of standing up a little bit higher and they're handing drinks down. So I'm thinking, do these people want to be bent over all day? So we kind of played around with the different heights to really get a good blend between what's going to be good for walk-up business and contrast that against the barista's workday. And that's how we came to the height of our window. The lateral movement of our window, where we put the window side to side, really kind of depended on our door. So I wanted a refrigerator between the window and the door. I just wanted to make sure that the window wasn't butting up against the door. That way I can sneak a fridge in there. The other thing is that I'm looking at the studs, the 1-inch metal tubing that's inside my trailer walls, and I really want to match up the frame of my window to that tubing so that I can tack it directly to the tubing, and it's a nice sturdy hold. It'll hold the majority of the weight of the window. So when do you want to do the windows when it comes to the build out itself? Well, we put ours pretty early on. It was right after the insulation. So you could do the window before the insulation. There's nothing wrong with that. That's less walls that you have to take off. My timeline didn't quite match up that way, so I just put it right after the insulation was put in, which meant I had to go back and take the inner walls off one more time. But that only took like 10-15 minutes. It wasn't a big deal. All right, so how much time should you allot to do this? This is really, for me, a one-day job. We spent most of the morning priming, preparing, and measuring where the window is going to go. And then most of the afternoon was dedicated towards the actual installation of the window. Okay, so moving on, tools and materials. So what tools or materials will we need for the window installation? Well, first you're gonna need a window. I got these one off of Amazon. It cost me $509 because I got the ones with the screen. It's by a company called Vivor. They are a pretty new one, a new brand to me. However, when I checked out their bad reviews, the biggest thing that they had for the bad reviews was the shipping. The corners were getting bent during their shipping. They've modified their shipping techniques. They now ship it in a wooden frame, so they're good windows to me. I'm happy with them. You're gonna need a cutting wheel. We used the kind of the diamond blade cutting wheel. It's a little bit more expensive, but it was better than just the cutting wheels that you get at Harbor Freight. I wanted something a little bit more sturdy because I knew it was going to be heating up, because that was a lot of steel that we were cutting. Those cost $26. When we measured the window, we measured based upon the 1-inch tubing inside the walls of my trailer. That was 48 inches. So I bought my window 48 inches. So my window literally goes from one tubing to the next tubing, kind of from like the frame to the frame. And I wanted to do that because it's really easy to tack to those frames. It makes it real sturdy. But there was nothing on the bottom and there was nothing on the top. So I had to go buy 1-inch steel tubing for that. I bought, it's $20 for 20 feet. And I just had them cut it up into 10-foot sections. I got 3 of those. I actually have some extra tubing. Mind you, I'm putting in 2 windows. So, for those of you out there just putting one window, like most of everybody, you can cut some of these numbers in half. You'll need some self-tapping screws. I used 1-inch self-tapping screws, spent $24 on those. You're gonna need bits to pre-drill some of these holes with the bits, and a bunch of extra like external silicone caulking, which you'll need as well. I spent $52 on those. So you'll need an angle grinder. You're gonna need a level, straight edge, marker for drawing the lines, L brackets if you decide to use self-tappers to tap in your horizontal braces. Some of you, however, might want to weld that. I thought I was going to have to weld it because that's what I've done in the past. However, when I went in and put in those horizontal braces with just L brackets and self-tapping screws, it was sturdy as hell. I didn't feel like a need to weld it. So I was happy with that. So I didn't weld it, but some of you might decide to weld those braces. So I'll leave that up to you. Okay, so let's talk about how to install your window. All right, so the first thing is you got to remove all the inner walls and get all the insulation out of there if you insulated. Step number 2 is to create some type of template. Now, remember, my windows came in that wooden frame, so we kind of use that wooden frame to move it around and get a good feel on where we wanted that window to go. Some of you might consider, like using some masking tape and just taping off your wall outside to kind of see what the window might look like. But you're going to want to use some type of template, cardboard template, styrofoam template, some type of template to get an understanding on what your window will look like on the wall. That way you can start marking out your height and your length. So speaking of height and length, those are the big points that you want to locate. Find out how tall you want this thing, and you want to locate the lateral position of it as well. It's a good moment now to start looking at reference points for these things. For us, the reference points were the steel beams. It was very easiest for us to determine where the steel beams were on the outside of the unit, because the bolts are going right into the steel beams. So, and then of course on the inside of the unit, we could just see these steel beams. So that's what we used as a reference point. But when you're locating your height and length, you'll want to start kind of looking around for reference points that you can access from both inside and outside the unit, just to help you understand where your cuts are going to be made. Okay, so step number 4 is to draw your outline. And for this, we drew an outline on the outside. We also drew an outline on the inside. One of the things that we learned on this one, we drew the outline just exactly. I mean, within a 1/16 of an inch to the actual window size itself, not counting the window lip, because these windows, they have a 1-inch lip on the very outside. I'm talking about the inner dimensions of the window that actually slip into the hole. We got it exactly. And the problem was it was a little difficult to push it in. It started catching in areas. Learning from that mistake, we decided to give it 1/8 of an inch extra wiggle room on each side of the window so that it just goes in and out easier. Our lip is a 1-inch lip, so we have plenty of room to play with. We're only using 1/8 of an inch excess on our measurement, but that allows us to be able to slip the window in easily without putting any stress on the sheet metal. Okay, so once we had the measurements for the window, then the next big thing was also adding in the measurements for the horizontal braces. One of the things that we ran into was that we had extra I-beams coming up through where our window was going to be. So we had the I-beams we're attaching to, but we also had another set of I-beams or 1-inch steel coming up through the window. So those had to get cut, as well as the sheet metal. And when those got cut, we actually had to go back and cut those 1 inch lower and 1 inch higher, so that when I stuck my 1-inch tubing as a brace to create the frame, that had a little extra room on the bottom and a little extra room on the top. So the sheet metal itself is cut exactly to the dimensions of the window with a 1/16 inch barrier or wiggle room. But then the steel tubing that went through the area of where the window is, that we had to cut a little bit extra off the bottom and a little bit extra off the top so that I can fit my braces into those. Okay, so step number 5 is the cuts. For the cuts, I started on the outside because it's a little easier to see a straight line. And basically what I did is I went through and cut the sheet metal first and just left the I-beams and the 1-inch steel tubing alone. That stuff I cut from the inside because it's a little easier to see those pieces from the inside of the trailer. So I did all my sheet metal from the out, went back and cut the I-beams from the inside. Okay, so once the cuts were done, I got the sheet metal and the beams. Then I just took that big piece of sheet metal out and dry fit the window in. I got a cool little video on that I'll share here.
All right, you ready? Okay.
Drum roll.
Drum roll, please. All right, I'm being on this side. Yay! Hello, do you have any coffee?
And since the dry fit looked good, at that point now all I had to do was put in my horizontal braces on the bottom and the top. So I went through and attached the 1-inch steel beam to my already pre-existing 1-inch steel beam. So we attached the horizontals to the verticals. Once the braces were all set up, then we went ahead and put the window back in. We left it open a little bit of a gap so that I can go around the inside of that 1-inch lip and fill it with just a big thick bead of silicone. Basically what I'm trying to do is when I go to push the window in that last little bit, I want it to squish that silicone all along that lip to make sure that it's waterproof. Once you push it in, then it's time to tack it down to all the steel beams from the outside. So I'm going to use 1-inch self-tapping screws, and I'm going to start screwing my window into each one of those I-beams. After it's bolted down, I'm going to go over the seams one more time with the bead of silicone just to make sure that all my cracks and my nooks and my crannies are taken care of, that it's in and completely waterproof. And that's it. That's how you put a window into a food truck, into a coffee truck. But I hope it helps. My name is Vincent. I own Green Joe Coffee Truck. We're rebranding Green Joe Coffee School since we're teaching people how to build coffee trucks. I offer a master class. It's really where I keep my best stuff. If you're interested in the master class, it is filled with consultations, weekly check-ins, homework assignments on content such as this, where you go through and start your business and buy a trailer and how to make the drinks and business plans and how to do marketing. It's just everything. 7 years of experience poured into this class. It's my baby. So if you're interested in that, go to www.greenjoecoffeetruck.com and you can check that out there. I hope it helps. Thanks for tuning in, and I will check you out next time.